I've spent thousands of hours of sales strategy, implementation, and experimentation, and it's made me over $111 million plus. From all this experience, I've developed the perfect closing strategy by harnessing the power of human psychology. And it's something you can do regardless of how much money and experience you have. And I would know because I started from zero. But before we get into how to use human psychology in our favor, let's take a brief look into why closing can be so hard for most people. If we are looking from a buyer's perspective, all they care about are two things. Number one is that what you're selling gets them what they want. They only care about themselves. Number two is that you are a trustworthy source and aren't lying to them. And from the seller's perspective, they only care about one thing, that you buy what they are selling so that they can make money. From the jump, psychology is set up against us because the buyer doesn't care if we get paid or not, and the seller doesn't care if the buyer gets what they want or not. In the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, which is about the former American stockbroker and financial criminal Jordan Belfort, there's a scene where he asks his partner Donnie to sell this pen to one of their new recruits. Donnie looks at the recruit and says, "Well, John, how long have you been in the market for a pen?" John responds by saying, "Well, I haven't been." Donnie then looks at him and says, "Well, f you, and here's your stupid pen back," and throws it at John's head. See, Donnie understood that trying to get John to want to buy a pen where there was no initial interest was an uphill battle. That's why some of the best salesmen all come from door-to-door sales, because they get good at getting someone to gain interest in a product right there on their doorstep in just a few minutes, which isn't easy. But Donnie knew if you wanted to make big money with sales, you'll only talk to interested buyers. By simply understanding this, we start to tip the scale of psychology in our favor. That's why before we move into a sales call, anything we can do to pre-qualify the prospect up front will make a massive difference. Things like organic content, paid ads, pre-call applications, emails, text messages, communities or Facebook groups, even YouTube videos like these. If we can get the prospect to have an interest in what we're selling before we start selling it, we already have increased our chances by over 50% that this person will buy. Early in my business career, I thought I sucked at sales because it seemed like every single phone call I got on, the customer just wasn't ready to buy. I couldn't understand what I was doing wrong, and I would give each and every call my all, but it just didn't work. Eventually, by implementing a stricter application process and canceling the ones that seemed to have low interest, I was able to double my closing rate. Some salesmen will brag they can close anyone like a badge of honor, but veterans will let the rookies waste all their time and energy on the less interested buyers, while they take the very best ones. Now, once we are only talking to interested buyers, we will start to use the rest of our power to influence the mind of the prospect with a sales script. Now, there's 8 points to a perfect script, and I'm gonna take you through each point to understand how to use psychology the entire way to manipulate the buyer into buying your product and service. Now, some people will get upset when I use the word manipulate, but that's exactly what sales is. The more ethical you are, the better it will be for both parties and your long-term reputation. But it is indeed manipulation. First up is the intro or pre-frame. Now, in every sales call we take, the goal is to get them to like us as quickly as possible. There's 2 main things you can do to get someone to like you. Number 1 is let them talk about themselves. People will talk for 20 minutes while you say nothing and say, "Wow, you are such a good salesperson." This is because people love talking about themselves and love when someone will listen. Use the psychology principle to your advantage. And number 2, relate back to them. People like those who are similar to them. The sooner you can find common ground, the more likely it is they are going to like you. Try to find something in the first few minutes like sports, traveling, kids, cars, or anything else where you can relate to them. The more similar you seem, the more trust you gain. Second is discovery. Most people get it wrong here and just read from a list of preset questions. That is a waste of time. The goal of discovery is to ask preloaded questions that get the prospect to commit to buying without them knowing it. Essentially, we want to make it their idea without them even knowing what we are doing. For example, 2 of my most favorite questions I like to ask in discovery are, why now? Why today? Why not in a year? Are you ready to move forward today if it's a fit? What would make this certain for you? The psychology behind that question is simple. If I can get them to commit now at the beginning of the call that they are ready to move forward today, then they can't use the excuse, "I'm not sure," or "I need to think about it," or "get back to me" at the end of the call. We can't tell someone, "You must move forward today," and hope for a great deal of success. People don't like being told what to do, and they certainly don't like to feel forced. That is why we never tell the prospect what to do, but only ask questions that will force their hand. One of my other favorite questions to ask is, how much money have you lost out on by not taking action? Example, if you started 6 months ago and could have made 10K a month, that's 60K, right? I want to get a number. This has the exact same effect. If they get to the end and they won't move forward, but admitted earlier in the call that they've lost a ton of money by not taking action, I can use that as leverage to make them feel bad for not moving forward. And sure, we can ask other questions like, what's your goal? What are you struggling with? What have you tried? Have you ever worked with a coach before, etc. But the goal is we want to ask questions that will force them to take action. People will do just about anything to not look like they're lying. And so if we can get them to commit to taking action early in the call, they won't want to look like liars at the end of it. Next up is the summary. People love to be heard and understood. So in the summary, we want to say back to them everything they committed to and summarize the entirety of the situation. This does a few things. It makes sure that you reaffirm their commitments to the promises they made earlier. Remember, nobody wants to be seen as a liar. It shows you listened to them and understood, and remember, people trust someone more when they feel understood. You just use this as an opportunity to prove to them you did. Next up is the most important part of the call called the 3 pillars that psychologically will help pre-sell the prospect into your offer. And I want to give you 2 different examples to drive the point home. So the first example is we'll do a business offer. The second example is we'll do a fitness offer. And the reason I do those is most people understand money, most people will understand fitness. Now, the first thing we have to do before we go through what we call the 3 pillars is understand what is it that the prospect wants. In business, it's very, very simple. They want to make as much money as possible with as little work as possible. In the perfect world, right? No one says, oh my gosh, I want to be a millionaire and work as hard as humanly possible. That usually comes with it. But in a perfect world, it's making more money with less work. And in fitness, it's very similar where they want to lose a lot of weight typically without putting in a lot of time or effort. So in fitness, we'll say lose weight is the goal. And they don't want to put in a lot of effort. So the easier it is, the better it is, right? That's why a lot of supplements right now, Ozempic, tirzepatide, all those things are super popular. Now, once we know this, then we have to think of 3 supporting reasons why someone would do this. So when we come to the business side, usually 2 of these reasons are going to be what we call USPs, unique selling propositions. And then the last one will be why they should pick you. So I'll just run you through something my company does that's been very effective for us. So the first pillar is what we would call offer creation. Now, when you make your point, you always need to do it in the format of what they do, they being the bad guys, everyone else, versus what we do. So I'll give you an example. So the first pillar is what we call offer creation. Now, most business owners come to us and they're told that they should do a low ticket offer, or they're trying to sell something for a low price, but they don't have a big following. They're not Kim Kardashian, and so they can't ever really gain traction. So what we do is we'll help bring you in, right? So that was they. Now we move to we. So what we do is we'll bring you in and we'll help you create an offer that you could sell at a premium price. Why? It's easier to get clients. You don't have to sell as many. They're better clients. You get paid more, and it actually will move the needle and change your life. So the first pillar is what we call offer creation. We want to keep you away from this and we want to do this. That is a simple explanation. It's showing people the bad side and showing them the good side. Why? Because most people don't know what the bad side looks like. So if I go into a store and I say, hey, I'm looking for the best perfume for my girlfriend, and I have 10 girls say, this is the best perfume, I'm more confused than when I walked in. But if I have a girl who says, look, these are the worst perfumes and here's why, and this is the best perfume and this is why, it builds more credibility and trust because she's showing me a comparison, which is where most sales individuals fail. So that would be pillar number 1. Now, if we go to fitness, is similar. So a pillar I could say that would support this fact, losing a bunch of weight without a lot of effort, is I could say how to eat whatever you want without sabotaging results. Now, for any of you fitness buffs out there, we usually can agree that it's calories in, calories out. So my phrasing here was eat whatever you want without sabotaging results, which means they have to stay within certain parameters, which would be caloric restriction. But notice I didn't say how to do caloric restriction or how to count your calories, because that would indicate they have to spend a lot of effort, which would lower their desire to buy. So psychologically, by saying eat whatever you want without sabotaging results, even though that is within your macros and your calories, this makes it more advantageous and more likely that they're going to want to buy because this sounds fun. This sounds a lot better than calorie counting or tracking your macros. And so this is the same thing where when we know what the objective is and what they want, then we can make these 3 pillars or these 3 reasons why we're going to be the best option. So going back to business, let's come up with a second objective. So in business, most people, as we said, want to make more money with less work. They usually have an offer issue and they usually have a lead generation issue. So a second thing I could try to say is, let's say I call it conversion conversations, okay? Now, so for those of you who are newer to business, follow me through on this. So again, we want to use the they versus we frame. So I could say, and this is exactly how you sound on a sales call. You can use this in your marketing, etc. I could say, look, what most people do is they're going to tell you to do a webinar. Now, webinars can work, but the issue is most people, they're not going to buy on the call or they're not going to book a call. You only get 30% of those individuals who open their emails. So pretty much if they don't buy or book a call on the webinar, you lose them. What we do is something we call conversion conversations, which is a unique follow-up system of text, emails, voicemails, DMs, you name it. We do it that increases application rates by over 57%. So what I'm saying is, look, you want more leads to make more money. This mechanism, this USP, the unique selling proposition, is why if you work with us, you will get more leads than if you work with someone else. It doesn't matter what the reason is. It just has to be a good reason that they can buy. Going back to the fitness offer, another thing we want to talk about is you can train however you want without sabotaging results, okay? Sorry for my handwriting, guys. I usually type on computers now. So the reason for that is, again, if you're a fitness buff, you know that 90% of results is nutrition, 10% is training. So you can still lose weight sitting on your ass at home if you don't work out. So again, I didn't say, hey, how to train as hard as humanly possible, and I'll give you a customized workout program, which every other trainer does. I said, hey, I'm going to teach you how to train without sabotage results. And here's the cool part. What most people do, because again, we want to keep the they do versus we do frame. What most people do is they say, hey, you got to do tons of cardio, you got to do tons of lifting and training and all this stuff. What we do is we keep this super simple, is that you don't have to work out if you don't want to, because 90% of results is nutrition. So it's better for you if you do, but at the end of the day, as long as you do the nutrition part, you'll be healthier than 80% of people. Sound fair enough? And people buy this because it's within their boundaries. It's helping them lose weight and it's lowering their amount of effort, which is ultimately what they want. So the last pillar is then usually something about us. Now, depending on where you're at in your business, this part will vary. So for example, let's say you're selling someone against me, right? And to date, we've done about 115 million in sales. So what you would say is you go, look, most people, they'll work with Tanner, but here's the thing. If you work with Tanner, you're not working with him directly, you're working with his team, right? And his team's really not as good as him. But if you work with me, even though I'm a smallest business owner, I'm gonna work with you one-to-one and give you way more time and attention than his team could. Okay, that's something you could do if you were smaller. Now, if you're bigger, if you're like me, what would I say? I'd say, well, look, most people, they go to these types of coaches or consultants, but they've only made 10K a month. They haven't done that well. But because we've done over 115 million in sales, it's more likely we could help you because we've gone through more lessons and hardships to get to that level. So we're gonna have way more experience to tell you what not to do and what to do. That would be an example. So what my team usually does in this number 3 is they're trying to get them to buy in. Here's the 2 USPs we're gonna focus on that's better than the competition. And then this third one is, why should we work with Tanner's company? And so they usually will go, look, there's 3 things you need to look at. Experience. So Tanner's done 115 million in sales. He's probably gonna be the top guy in that room. If you meet someone else who has more, go with them. Specificity, right? So especially because I've ran multiple companies, I've had a recruiting agency, I've ran a fitness company, I've done these other things. We'll focus on the fact, hey, it's better to get help from a real estate agent if you're building a real estate company than if you get help from a fitness coach, and vice versa. The specificities in there. I'll usually use a Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods analogy where I'll say, you don't want Michael Jordan teaching you golf, you don't want Tiger Woods teaching you basketball, right? Because they don't have specific experience there. And then the last one is level of attention, right? So my team usually say, hey, it's better to work with Bill Gates' team for 4 hours than to work with Tanner for 5 minutes, right? Because we would usually get objections where people would say, oh, but this guy says he'll work with me one-to-one, but it's like, yeah, but even if he does work with you one-to-one, he's either not gonna be as good, or B, he's not gonna work with you that long. So it's not really that helpful. So this is an example of what I call the 3 pillars that helps you drive home the point psychologically to get the customer to buy. And all you have to do is think, what in a perfect world does that customer want? And then you think of 3 points around your service and delivery that will support what they actually want, okay? Coming back to the fitness one, the way I would sell this is I would go, look, so now that you know you need to train and eat the way you want, now you have to decide who to hire. So you have 3 options. You get an in-person PT, you can get an online program like Beachbody, so we'll just call it BB, or you could hire me. And this is exactly how I would sound. Again, because I'm trying to just make sure you guys understand these points. So if you get a PT, that's fine, but the issue is that PTs are focusing on the 10% of results working out and not the 90%, which is nutrition. So why would you want to pay an in-person PT that's focused on the 10% of results? And if you fire him, he doesn't get a paycheck, so he doesn't really want to teach you how to do it on your own. Why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense, because at the end of the day, you want to work with someone whose interest is aligned with yours. Number two is you could get an online program like Beachbody. Now, Beachbody is great. It's cheap. I love cheap stuff. But the issue is they give everyone the same program. So if a 300-pound man has the same program as a 200-pound woman, that doesn't really make sense, right? They also set it up to where you'll get results really fast, so they get great transformation pictures, but then you can't stick with it because it's too rigorous, right? Super high cardio, very low amount of calories. Now, with me, the benefit here is that if you work with me one-to-one, not only am I going to teach you how to eat the way you want without sabotage results, not only am I going to train the way you want without sabotage results, but when you're done, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know so you never have to hire another trainer again. So would you rather pay a one-time high price fee, or would you rather pay $50 a month for the rest of your life? And they're like, oh, high price fee. And so by this point in the call, I've actually pre-sold them on my idea that this is exactly what they need. And it doesn't matter what offer this is or what company I build, I always have this part in the process so that when we get down to the closing, they always are ready to buy. Next, we go into a brief overview. Now, you've probably heard the phrase, people don't buy features and benefits, which is true, but confused people don't buy at all. The goal here is to make a simple explanation, everything they are going to get, so it feels tangible to them. Don't expect to say absolutely nothing and still get a positive outcome. Before people part with their hard-earned money, they need to feel at ease. They can't feel at ease if they are confused what they are getting. So lay out a basic format for them. So, Mr. John, you're going to get one-to-one support, curriculum, templates and done-for-you materials, group calls, and a private account manager. This ensures they can't use confusion as the reason not to buy. Hopefully, you're seeing we want to do everything in our power to make sure we have left zero room for a no. Everything we're doing from the top down to the bottom is to use psychology in our favor. And another way we can use psychology in our favor is by creating certainty. We want to frame this in a way where we will actually get an honest answer. So now that you've heard everything, why do you feel this would be a good fit for you? One of two things will happen. Either they will pause or hesitate, at which point we know they are not sold and should not move the call forward anymore until we can raise their level of certainty higher. Or number two, they will be very sure and you'll be able to tell in their tonality. Psychologically, they must be as close to 100% certain before we drop the price to buy, or they will not buy. If you've done everything right before this step, they should be ready to go. Then we close by dropping the price. The best way to do this to get buy-in is by confidently saying the price and then shutting up. People like confident people. Don't drag this part out by saying 3 to 4 paragraphs before telling them the price. The more confident you come off, the more confidence they will have in you. Now, don't think just because you've used psychology successfully throughout the call, you won't get any objections. You will, but we will use mindset shifts in the same way to get the outcome we want. Let's go over to the whiteboard to walk through the only 4 objections you should ever get if you've done it right. So the most common is price. If I go into a sale, I'm gonna walk you through this, and I go, Tanner, the price is $10,000 for 4 months. That's the close. Prospect, let's say his name's John, goes, oh, you know what, Tanner, that's too much. That's the objection. I say, John, no problem, I totally get it. I agree with him. And now I start to isolate. So I go, John, let me ask you this. Is there anything else besides the price that would stop you from moving forward today? He's like, no, it's just the price. Like, cool. So if we were able to figure out the price, then you would buy. And keep in mind, I want to give you logical frameworks. I don't like emotional selling because emotional selling is too complex for someone to learn, right? I want to make this super straight and narrow so that it's easy to follow. Emotional selling is all over the place. And to be frank, unless you're a super high level sales rep, I don't even think you're qualified to do it. So we want to isolate that. And he goes, yeah, it's just the price. So that is called a tie down. We got him to commit that, yeah, it's just this thing. In sales, we don't want people moving all over the place. We want to get it down to one thing so we can beat it. If they have multiple objections, you cannot win until you've beaten all of them. So we want to narrow it down. So he says yes. And then I go, cool. Just to confirm, if we figure out the price, you're down to move forward today. Yes. So that's a double tie down. This is key. If you don't get those tie downs, then that later they can go back and try to back out. You get these tie downs as you go so they can't go back later and go against what they said prior. That's super important in sales. That's why we're asking these questions. So now I go, cool. Well, John, so I can best help you What's your cash on hand situation look like? So checking, savings, credit cards, what do you have now that you can use? Not in your Roth IRA, not this, not that. Like, what do you have that you can actually use? And John goes, well, I have this amount. Now, before I get into what to do next, let's say this is a $10,000 program. You need to know what's the lowest amount of money you'll take. Meaning, if you had someone who came to you and said, I want to do it, I'm on board, but all I have is this much, what's the lowest amount you would take? This can vary for every business owner or sales rep. So if you're watching this, that's up to you. If you only want to take 10,000, great. Then you don't have to learn this next part. If you want to take anything less than that, you need to learn this part. And to be honest, you should learn it anyways. But this number that you're willing to take in a financial squeeze is important. So let's say here that the price is 10,000 and the lowest amount we're willing to take is 2,000. Now, when I ask for cash on hand from John, what's your cash on hand? And if he says anything below 2,000, it's pretty simple. I go, okay, so just to be clear, you don't have enough money to do this. Meaning, when you say you have less than 2,000, you're not saying that you don't want to do it. You're saying you literally don't have it, right? It gets pretty easy from there because like, yeah, I literally don't have it. And you go, cool, like, is there any other way we can work this out? Do you have friends, family, etc.? No. You wrap the call up. It's that simple. Like, people will say that if someone wants it bad enough, they'll buy it. But end of the day, guys, like, you're not selling a Lamborghini. I know people use that example or a Ferrari, but yeah, you're not fucking selling that, are you? This is just a real life product. They need it possibly. They're not either seeing the value to go out and get a loan or cash or whatever, or they just simply don't have it. Now, if someone genuinely has it and they won't do it, that's different. That's just a belief issue and you need to work on it. But let's say they genuinely don't have at least $2,000. Then you wrap up the call. Done. Now, if they say anything above that, so he goes, oh, I got 4,000, I got 3,000, I got 5, it doesn't matter. Anything above the minimum number you're willing to take. It's very simple. You go, cool. Let's say John says 3,000. John, so you got $3,000. Yes. Okay. So just to be clear, you have 3,000. Is that what you can spend per month or total? Total. Okay, cool. So here's what I'm thinking, John. And this is how we get another tie down. I go, look, typically the price of the program is $10,000. Now, with that being said, that's not realistic for you because you don't have it. You only have 3,000. Now, I'm willing to work something out for you, but before I do, I just want to make sure you can move forward today, right? Because I want this to be fair. I don't want to figure something out for you and then you tell me you can't move forward. So before I figure something out for you financially, I just want to make sure you can move forward today. Why is that so impactful? Because you're getting them to commit that they want to move forward as long as you figure something out. I've seen a million times people get to here and they go, John, what's your cash on hand? This much. They figure out a deal and he goes, yeah, I still need to think about it. Because you didn't get the commitment that he's going to move forward once you figure it out. That's so important. In this case, John goes, yeah, like, okay, cool. Or they might say, well, what's the amount? It's like, well, don't worry. Like, I'll figure it out for you. I just want to make sure you'll move forward if it makes sense. You don't need to say the number. You don't give any discounts. You don't drop prices until they commit. Bad salesmen drop price immediately. That's why they don't sell anything, because it comes off desperate. People don't buy from desperate people. They buy from confident people. This will make you sound confident because you're trying to give him an actual solution. Now, once he commits to that, I'll say, cool. Well, I don't think you should spend all of it, but I do think you should do something. Okay? So here's what I have in mind. And then I will pitch what I have. One of two things are going to happen. Either he says yes or he goes, that still won't work. And I go, cool. Well, what do you suggest then? Because I wanted to come with a solution that seemed to make sense off the finances. What do you suggest? And that's it. And then they're going to, say this or that, and you wrap the call up. Very simple. Now, if they still won't buy, but they have the money, now it's a belief issue. We need to go back to discovery earlier in the call and go, well, look, you said this, you said this, you said this, you said if we figure it out, you move forward. What's the deal? That's a belief issue. And we're going to also go through the belief objection later. But this is price. This is, I would honestly say, like 70% of my clients' issues. If you can learn how to do this properly and sound smooth, there's more YouTube videos. You guys can check that out on my YouTube. Just look them up. You'll make a ton of sales. You'll make a ton of money. It's so easy. And you'll sound good doing it. You sound empathetic. You're helping them out. You're getting money for your business. And I'll be honest with you, people who do this make more money, because even if this isn't the price you wanted, if you want a 10K, but you get $2 or $3 grand, that money goes into ads. It goes to your team. Like, it helps you run the business. Getting something is better than nothing unless it's too strenuous for your fulfillment team. Number 2, spouse. So with spouse, kind of the same thing. We have A, B, C, D. So if I say, all right, Thanasi, 10 grand. And he goes, you know what, Tanner? I just got to talk to my wife. All right. Hate that one. Or my business partner. I go, cool. What are you going to do if she says no? And he usually will go, well, I probably won't do it, right? 20% of the time they'll say that. I go, great, let's just sign up. That happens very rare, right? I'll be honest, that doesn't always happen, but it does sometimes. You'd be shocked. Usually what they'll say is I go, well, what are you going to do if they say no? And Thanasi will go, well, I probably wouldn't do it. So I go, got it. What would their biggest objection be? I'd say 80% of the time that's what happens. I go, Thanasi, it's 10K. Hey, I can't do it. Okay, why? Well, my spouse. I gotta talk to my spouse. Got it. What are you gonna do if they say no? Well, I wanna do it. Okay, what would their biggest objection be? That happens 80% of the time. And then what they usually say is this, well, it would be price. It's like, oh. So you just move right back over here to price. And you go, oh, got it. So it's not that you need to talk to your wife. You just already know her so well that you know it's gonna be price. So if you figure price out, you can move forward today, right? Yeah. And then you just walk through the price objection. That's 80% of the time. I'd say this is 80%, this is like 20%. Now, if you figure that out and they're like, yeah, I still gotta talk to her, then you go to C, which is called past agreements. And past agreements just means you go, well, look, Thanasi, does your wife know you're here? Yes. Does she know that you want to do this? Yes. Does she want you to be happy? Does she support you? Yes. And if the roles are reversed, will you support her? Yes. Then why would she be against you doing something that she knows she wants you to do and makes you happy and is going to be good for you? If they still won't do it, you moved into what's called a delayed payment. Now, this is how I specifically do the spouse objection. This can change slightly depending on what the objection is, but I love this one. So I go, you still got to talk to your wife, right? And I've done it 3 times. 3 is the magic number. If you push 3 times and they won't do it, wrap the call up, you're going to break rapport. So even if it's a low chance it's going to close at this point, you have 0% chance if you keep pushing because you're going to break any rapport you have left. So I go, look, Thanasi, let me ask you this. Are you 51% sure that you want to do it or 51% no? So I know you got to talk to your wife, et cetera. You got to sleep on it, but I just want to make sure, like, are you 51% yes or 51% no? 90-something% of the time they go, oh, I'm 51% yes. I'm like, perfect. So let me ask you this. What I typically do in this situation, as long as you're 51% sure, is I take a deposit, a refundable deposit. And then if you go back and you talk to your wife, right, and she says you can't do it, she says this, she says that, sometimes I'll make it funny. Right? I'm like, oh, she says, you know, she doesn't want you to be richer, smarter, et cetera. Then I'll just refund you and call it a day. Does that sound fair enough? And then what will happen is either they'll do it or they'll say, I don't want to do that. And they go, okay, well, end of the day, you can do whatever you want, but I just want to be sure. Push, pull, right? So end of the day, you can do whatever you want, which is I pull back, but then I push and go, but I guess I don't really think this makes sense because you say you need to talk to your wife. I get that. But you say you're over 51% sure. And what I like to do in my process is just get a deposit. So I'm not chasing people around. It shows me you're a little committed. And it's fully refundable. And again, you're not signing an agreement or anything. So let's say I'm the world's worst person on earth. You can just charge back, get your money back, right? So I'm cool to let you do what you want, but I just want to let you know this is my process. And I feel like if you can't follow that, then we probably just aren't a fit and let's just call it a day. What do you say? That is a more aggressive way to try to get some commitment. Because remember, when they're saying this, it's usually not that they need to talk to their spouse. They're just not going to sign up. Those are the 2 most common. I'd say this is like 70% of the time. This is 20%, and then these last 2 are, 5 or 10% each. So that's spouse. The next one is time. Time's pretty easy. So this is like, I need to think about it. I need time. I'm not ready. So there's a million ways to handle this. The way I like to handle it, again, because I'm a very logical seller, so I only like to give you one way to sell, is this. I just go, look, do you know what deciding means? They go, no. I'm like, all right, cool. In Latin, what it means is to cut off. So we cut off the future of your past or the future of your dreams, right? Because inaction or not making a decision is still a decision. So let's see if we can walk through how you can make a decision. Are you cool with that? Yeah, cool, great. So there's really 3 things we need to think about. So guys, so number 1 is, do you trust us, right? Do you believe what we're saying? Yeah, okay, cool. Number 2 is, do you think you're get closer to your goal or farther away working with us? Like, obviously it's like closer. Like, do you think like working with us is going to get you farther? It's like, no. Okay, cool. Then number 3, do you have finances available or resources you can get? Yeah, okay, cool. So based on that, you actually have all the information you need to make a decision. So let's just go ahead and make the decision that you've already made. Sound fair enough? If they don't do that, I move into a delayed deposit. Now, keep in mind, guys, this is not a very common objection. Okay, it's very rare. And if you've done the discovery correctly at the beginning, yes, I'm going to move forward today. Yes, this is what I want. These very rarely come up. It's almost 90% of the time going to be one of these 2. So if you're going to learn 1 objection, learn this. If you're going to learn 2 objections, do that and spouse, price and spouse. Okay. Once you've done these 3, occasionally you'll still get people who aren't ready to buy. And now what the odd objection is belief. So the only other time you should get another objection if you've done a good job is when it gets to belief, meaning you've beaten the objection and they go, you know what, Tanner, I gotta think. I don't know. I just, I'm not ready. Thank you for the call. Like, let's just follow up. And I go, cool, no worries. Well, look, let me ask you this, John. What's the worst thing you can imagine happening? All right, let's say you sign up. What's the worst outcome you can think of? And they always will say, well, it doesn't work. It's like, okay, well, let's walk through that. Because again, we just got to beat these objections. They're not real. They're fake. They're just making shit up. Beat it. Just push it out of the way. So I go, cool. So look, let's walk through the 3 options. You can do it and get results and everybody's happy, right? So you get results, we get paid, everyone wins. You do and you don't get results, you could get a refund. Now, If you do a refund, it needs to be performance guaranteed, meaning performance-based, meaning they have to do XYZ things to get a refund. In consulting specifically, this could vary on business, but if you're doing something where they have to do work, you cannot do it just money back whenever you want guarantee. Okay, this is not tech, this is not SaaS, this is not a piece of cloth or shoes. They have to do work, so I make it performance-based. So for example, in my consulting company, if we did do that, it would be, you have to do X amount of calls, X amount of messages, X amount of ads. Like you gotta do stuff like that to get the refund. You don't just get a refund for no reason, okay? So that would be number 2. If you don't have a refund, just cut this out. Let's do it real quick. Let's pretend this isn't here. So I go, number 1, what's the worst thing that can happen? Number 1, you do it and get results, everyone's happier. Number 2, you do nothing and stay stuck. There's only one decision that keeps you stuck. So let's make the other decision that's gonna move you forward, okay? If I have this, I go, number 1, you can do it and get results, you're great. Number 2, you get a refund. Or number 3, you do nothing. So out of all those decisions, the only one that's gonna hurt you is doing nothing, because you'll either get a full refund or you're gonna get results. So let's go ahead and make the decision that you know you need to make anyway. Sound fair enough? If they don't do that, then again, you move into delayed payment. That right there, everyone, is what I've learned from knocking on 27,000 doors, doing $100 million in sales, building multiple sales team, having 50,000 clients, doing over $1 billion in revenue for our clients. If you can just follow what's in this video, I'm telling you that's 99% of sales training. And that's how you can close more clients with psychology. If you want to see how to sell something to anyone at any time, click here.